Good evening, everybody. It is day 32 of 365 of the greatest book ever written. So, it was an interesting day of reading. So I'm looking forward to kind of going over it and then kind of comparing it to how it relates to the real world, because I do think there's a tremendous amount of similarities. And there happens to be some news that came out today from no other than Amazon, which I think is pretty fascinating. So I'm going to hit on that as well. Hey, John, how are you? And say, let me see. So yeah, I'll take a look. It's an emails that I received. Let me see. So let me just get this posted, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I hope everybody had the time to have a look and go over the readings from YouVersion. I think it is helpful, and also give it some thought and so forth, because it's important that everybody else kind of think about what it means to them. I think there's probably a slightly different interpretation to everybody based on where they are at a particular age. I think that when you read the greatest book ever written, it's going to have different meanings at different ages of one's life, depending on where they happen to be at a particular moment in time. And so I think it's that's what makes the book so special, and so forth. So I'm just going to post this, and then we can start going over the stuff here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but I've been told that when I try to do the automatic posting on this, on all this, that it's not flowing through to people's feeds. So I don't know what exactly, I guess you can say that YouTube is doing, but it's not pushing the information out, which is why I have to take this, this slightly longer approach to repost each piece. So that's just that. Okay, so we're on to Exodus 13. And, so basically the Pharaoh finally let the people go. Anybody who's seen the movie, I think it was Charlton Heston with Moses. And if I'm not mistaken, what's her name? I think it was the Ten Commandments. Yes, I think it was the movie The Ten Commandments. I think Elizabeth Hurley, not Elizabeth Hurley. Why am I thinking Elizabeth Hurley? Not that one. The other movie. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's a classic, and I know that. Let me see here. Ben-Hur is a good movie. He's done a lot of great movies, but I think he did the Ten Commandments. Hold on a second. Planet of the Apes. I don't know. Yes, there you go. Elizabeth Taylor. That's who was in it. But anyways, it's a wonderful movie. And when I was going over this scene in Exodus 13, Exodus 14, I kept thinking of that movie. So it's a pretty powerful scene when God tells Moses to part the Red Sea and to go through, and basically the Israelites walk through the sea. All the Egyptians end up following them. Once they get across, it's like game over. The sea closes in and literally drowns every single Egyptian, all the leadership, all the entire military. Not a single person makes it out of there alive. And it seems to be pretty fitting that that God had hardened the hearts of the Pharaoh, as well as all the people that were fighting on behalf of the Pharaoh and the army. And it goes to show you what happens, I guess, when you let your heart remain hardened, is that destruction is inevitable. I can't really say that I've seen people thrive with a hardened heart. I think that they're definitely they may think they're thriving, but if you're disconnected and you're cut off from the vine of I guess the trunk of the vine, which is Christ, it's got to be you with regardless of what you think you have and how much power you think you have, you're still disconnected from the source, from the truth, from the light, and you're ultimately going to perish, and not just perish in this physical world, folks. I do believe that in the case of some individuals that are that turn their back on God, I'm not entirely sure they get to continue on, and so I know that this is I've kind of gotten into discussions with other people about this, that every soul is always saved, and I'm not entirely convinced that's true. I think that some souls are not saved, and I guess it just depends on how defiant they are of God. And I guess maybe those souls that aren't saved, maybe they're evil, and maybe that's what demons are. But I do think that not everybody gets a pass unless you're truly sincere at the very end, right? This is the difference between I say this and kind of say it jokingly, but it's also serious. The difference between Jews and Christians. I think a lot of people don't really know the difference when you talk about it in philosophical terms. In the Jewish faith, there's is when you're in the Jewish faith, you got a scorecard, and there's like a little, I hate to say it, but like a little balance sheet, debits and credits. And, when you do good things, your column for good things goes up. And then when you do bad things, your column continues to, it's like a horse race. And I guess depending on what type of thing that you do, good or bad, you're going to have different weighting process. And at the end of your life, you're going to be judged on all your actions of your life, every single one of them. And so you can say it's a more difficult religion from the standpoint that you have to be you don't get to mess around. Like you can't kind of screw up. You're expected to know right out of the gate. And and maybe this is a difference as well, is a lot of the Jewish people that I've met over my life, they tend to study the Torah. They study, I guess, the Old Testament. They just seem to study the teachings in much greater detail, and it's more incorporated into their culture. Now, I've met some Christians, and I guess I'm Roman Catholic, so the Roman Catholics don't study as intensely as, from my observation, being a Roman Catholic my whole life. They don't study as intensely as Jews do with regards to studying Old Testament or Scripture or their religious text. Now, in terms of other Christian faiths, I have met some that most definitely, study pretty intensely as well, and they really go through and some of them seem to memorize passages and parts of the Bible, and it's almost like they have I don't know. I don't want to say it's a game, but they kind of see how much of they can memorize versus other people that they run into. Okay. I can't say that I fall into that camp. I kind of remember the stories, but I don't try to memorize passages of the Bible. I never have. And so with regards to Christianity, and this kind of goes back to your heart, hardening of your heart. If your heart is hardened, or your heart is hard throughout your entire life, and you've lived a horrible life, if you were in fact Jewish, you're not going to make it out really well. God's gonna kind of know the score on you, and there's no hiding it. However, if you're Christian and you've kind of lived a pretty lousy life, and you've done a lot of bad things for the first 10, 20, 30 years of your life, 40 years of your life, 50 years of your life, whatever the number is. And then at the very end, your heart is no longer hardened, and you turn to God and you ask for forgiveness, and you try to live a righteous life. And it could just be for a minute. It could be for an hour. I guess it could be for a day. it doesn't matter. God will know if you are in fact sincere and that you are in fact, you've in fact reconnected with God, and you get to go through. So then you get, and this has been a very difficult thing for me. I know when I was reading this at first, I learned this lesson, I guess, decades ago now. There was a side of me that felt like this is crap, like, wait a second, if you live a good life and you're doing all the right things and you try to live a good life, someone who's not lived a really horrible life and done a lot of bad things, they both get, you're equal and you get to both get through. And, but as I've matured, I guess, and have my own family and thought about all this stuff in more detail, and I kind of see the benefits of both. If you want to have a very, hate to say it, you want to have a more controlled society, and you want to have everybody follow within the lines of how everything should be, and what the rules are. I think Judaism is probably a pretty good with that in that respect. In that, like, it keeps a really tight ship. Everybody kind of knows what's expected of them, and that there's a scorecard for everybody that's equal, right? Whereas Christianity, we all kind of admit we're screw ups, like, I guess you could say we're sinners, right? That's what they said. We screw up at time to time. We keep trying. We try to get better. We try to make fewer mistakes. We try to do the right thing. We ask for forgiveness. Then we kind of do it again sometimes. And so we kind of go back and forth. And the whole idea is that, we keep making continual progress, and that will ultimately be saved because we're all children of God. So just as though, not any different. And this is the analogy, once again, of families and children and so forth. If we're all children of God, and you have some of us, some kids are more behaved and better behaved than some of the other kids that are troublemakers. But maybe sometimes the fact those troublemakers turn into something. Right? They turn their life around. They kind of grow up and they do other things, not only to raise good families, but to do things that make society much better off. So there seems to be, I think it's a good mix. I guess this is why, if you've heard me refer to things, from the context, I say this a lot, and I really believe it, and I really do mean it. The United States is a Judeo-Christian nation. Now, there's other religions, and I'm not trying to take anything away from other religions. I happen to enjoy reading about other religions. I have over my lifetime. I've learned about Hinduism and Buddhism and some American Indian religions and so forth. I'm just fascinated about learning about all this stuff, and everybody has a different perspective, and I like to see kind of what makes people what they are. I guess you can say, in a different life, I might probably be an anthropologist. Like, I've really enjoyed studying different cultures and what makes people tick, and I've always enjoyed that. And maybe it's just because I like to kind of quantify different types of characteristics and attributes of what leads to success and so forth. Okay, so as we're kind of going through this, and I think about this whole story about all these people being lost, they never did turn. They never made that choice. Like, we all have free will, and these soldiers, these Egyptians that were chasing the Israelites through the Red Sea, I'm just surprised that none of them said, you know what, I'm not going. I've had enough. This is way too much for me, folks. I don't know who this God is that they're following, but I'd rather be on their side because this God is just like, he's unleashed all these plagues. He's done all this crazy stuff to our Pharaoh. He's killed all our firstborn sons. And then he finally gets us to let his people go. And instead of just letting them go and let bygones be bygones, we go and chase them. and we're going to be like, we're still going to get you. And then their God parts the sea, and like a bunch of dumbasses, we follow them into the sea thinking that somehow we're going to make it okay onto the other side. The whole thing just, this whole thing is pretty funny. I mean, so anyways, when I think about this story, that's what I kind of think through. I kind of think through the whole chain of events of what happened before they all just get wiped out in the very end. And, I guess you can say in some respects, this is kind of what, we're kind of going through as a society. I hate to say it. There's a bunch of things that we know were signs. We keep hearing about signs, right? Everybody's kind of hear about them. I remember years ago, you'd hear about a sign. Oh, this is a sign of end days, right? Every single person in this country's had to hear about. It's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. Every couple of years, 5 years, the past 30 years, I've heard about people saying these are signs, and people doing videos about this is the sign of end days, right? Maybe in some respects they were kind of right. They were just a little early on different aspects of the signs. So maybe the signs weren't just 1 year. Maybe they were a 20-year period. So there's one sign over 20 years, and then there's a different one that's 5 years long, and then there's one that's 1 year long. And so all these different signs that kind of relate to the readings of Exodus and so forth, and these stories that we've been going over the past couple of weeks, maybe they all do get threaded together if you look at the spectrum of time. And, our minds are pretty interesting because, when I close my eyes and I think about what I was like at 20, it feels like yesterday. I mean, it feels like right now. So I would assume everybody else has that ability. When you go back into your mind and you replay something that has happened to you in this life, or a conversation or someone you met. I have incredible recall of the details of everything that happened, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years ago, five days ago. And so when you clear your mind and you kind of go into that state, and you look at a 20, 30, 40, 50-year period, depending on how long you've been here, then all these lessons, it's easy to throw them all into, 50 pages, 100 pages of the Bible and be like, wow, this really took place over 50 years or 100 years, but here's everything that took place. And so I do think, we have to, obviously live in the moment in terms of be present, like a child, right? This is what Christ means when he says, be like a child, and be present in the moment. Our past, I've heard of a great analogy in the past that, what happened to us in the past is kind of like the wake of a ship. If you think about a ship that's going through the ocean, the past waves, are kind of behind the ship, but the ship keeps moving forward. And now you could study those waves as to how that boat went through that water in time. But in reality, it's kind of like, they're just like echoes of what happened at that point. It doesn't really reflect what happened at that moment because the ship has already moved through it. So, it's important not to dwell on the past and to forgive yourself if you've had bad things happen in the past and so forth. And because you're not there anymore in the sense of your reality, but if you try to live in the past, it becomes your reality. So let me say that again. If you try to live in the moment by focusing too much on the past, everything that's happened in the past, your reality, your past becomes your reality now, and it just stays that way. And that's not fair to yourself. It's not fair to everybody else around you. It's not fair to your family. You take the lessons, the good and the bad, and then you examine the reality that we're in now, living in the moment as a child, and you just assume that you're, and I guess this is maybe what born agains think. You pretend like you're born again. Like if you came into this world tomorrow, for example, and you just literally psyched yourself up and said, it's my first day on earth. Tomorrow is my first day. Everything that happened to me before yesterday, before tomorrow, is gone. It's like poof. But somehow I have all these insights about life and all this knowledge and information and lessons and good things and bad things. But they all happen to somebody else. They didn't even happen to me. Like I might have been in that body, but that wasn't me. Today is my new life. And sometimes when I kind of think about that, when I hear people that say they're born again, that's what comes to my mind is they're basically saying, you know what? I'm shedding everything from the past. And I don't know. I've never really had an in-depth conversation with someone who's a born-again Christian. But I'm just saying, well, that's the image that comes into my mind when I hear this is what these folks want to do when they're born again. And I do think there's a lot of value into this blank slate mentality on each day, that each day is a blank sheet of paper, and that you don't attach yourself too much to, I guess I hate to say too much. That's not even, you shouldn't attach yourself at all to what happened before, but you should be grateful and appreciative of everything that's in your life at that moment in time, all your relationships, families, everything that you're doing. But you need to somehow thread it together to hopefully make good decisions on that day as well as going forward. So it's complicated. It's like this whole duality problem. You want the connection, but then you can't have too much of the connection. It's almost be like it's an acknowledgement of the connection, but the connection doesn't have any control over you. So you're not a slave to the connection. So maybe that's a good way to think about it. Your past isn't your master, right? And you don't want to be a slave to your past. But at the same time, the knowledge and the insights of your past are worthwhile. And so I know this is maybe it's a weird way to explain Exodus, but this is all the stuff that was flowing through my head as I'm reading this, that this is what this is tied into. And so I don't know if you guys agree or you disagree, but as I was going through this Exodus story, this is what I was thinking about, because, when you go to Exodus 15, then Moses and the people sang the song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. He has hurled both horse and rider into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has given me victory. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God. I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. Yahweh is his name. Okay, so it kind of goes through, and they wrote a song about everything that just happened. And, when you think about victory, right? Part of this victory in this story is, God ultimately prevails over evil and people with hardened hearts. Now, when you take that connection to your own life and you say, you know what, I want to have victory over how I live my life. I want to live a righteous, victorious type of life. Then how do you live that life? Well, if you refuse to have your heart be hardened when evil things happen to you, right? So let me slow down and say this. Okay, because this is a lot to unpack. If you go through life and you have bad things happen to you by evil people, and we all have had bad things at some point happen to us, but even with all those bad things that happen to us, we do not let it harden our hearts. So it's almost like the whole concept, if you love and you lost love, you have a choice. You don't let yourself be vulnerable again. And then you say, I'm never going to let myself get hurt like that again. We've all heard these stories in books, and we've known people like this. And maybe we've lived through a similar experience at some point on a micro level where we refuse to be loved again because of, a falling out of love, etc. And what I guess what I'm saying is, if you learn how to let go of that and just appreciate it for what it was in terms of part of this tapestry of your life, and that you don't let it harden your spirit, right? Your heart, I do think your spirit is kind of part of your heart energy. in your mind and so forth. So the spirit's an interesting thing, right? Yeah, I've thought a lot about it. It's like you have your brain function, so you have your mind, right? So is your mind just kind of hovering over your brain, or is your mind part of the brain? Which one is it? Is it the current that flows through the physical brain? And then you have obviously your heart, and so is your heart the energy from your soul? Is that what kind of keeps the clock ticking? The heart beating, or are the two tied together with your soul? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to think about this whole thing, but looking at it one piece at a time, the thoughts that you have about the past and the feelings that you have about the past and how your energy flows from those activities determines if you live or die in the current moment. And it doesn't need to be literal, folks. It could turn into literal, because some people, they do let their bodies get destroyed by disappointment, possibly by lost love, by not forgiving themselves for things, and literally their body will I guess form different diseases. I do believe that your psychology, and not just what you eat and your physical activity, but what you think of yourself, what you think of what you could have been, but your heart feels like, if you feel like you've been loved or not loved, all those things. It's a complicated portfolio of sorts, where it all kind of meshes together, and it manifests itself in illness and so forth. And if you think about our society, right, tying into all this, we have a lot of evil people that are trying to hold us down, our energy, our spirit, by a lot of different things. They turn around and try to put a bunch of different chemicals and things into our foods, our chemicals all over our environment. They try to give us programming, which makes us think that people are inherently bad or evil, or people are all out to get everybody, when the vast numbers of human beings are not like that. Don't get me wrong. We need to make sure that anybody who is, we do need to bring them to justice. I do believe in the strict rule of law, but I happen to be a humanist. I think most human beings are intrinsically good and loving spirits, and I think that the environment that we live in, with all this negativity, creates situations where people lose sight of that. They lose sight of that childlike energy, where a child is just happy to be here. Doesn't know any better, I guess you could say that. They don't know any better. They don't have expectations of all this bad stuff happening, and maybe they don't know about this bad stuff happening. And this is when children, I guess, move to adolescence, when they come to the realization that all these bad things can happen. That's when they lose some of their innocence. And so, we each have a choice every day as to, do we want to have faith that the difficult times and the evil that we went through and faced will ultimately be a lesson that we can learn from, and then still move forward and create a life that will bring us great joy and give us what what God has basically said we're entitled to. So I do believe that God thinks we're all entitled to love, because I do believe love is infinite. There is no shortage of love. We create shortages in our own mind, and I think those shortages in our mind are the result of attachments to past events, or evil things that happen to us, bad things that happen, expectations not being met. But I hate to say it, that burden's on us. That's on us to let go of that. But if you let go of that, and love is infinite, and then you turn around and you learn these other lessons that you kind of pull together and thread, but you don't attach yourself to the lessons. You just use them as little guideposts for how to make better decisions in the present. I do think that it leads to tremendous amount of happiness, and it will lead to living a victorious and as well as righteous life. And I think that's the whole point of Exodus for me, when I've kind of gone through this. Okay, so now we are on to Matthew 21. Okay, so I kind of like this. I like when Jesus toys with these these rabbis. You got to remember, folks, Jesus was Jewish. So here's this Jew basically saying, "Hey guys, I really like your lanes. These are nice lanes, but I want to kind of color and drive outside the lane. So how about we try to find a little bit of balance and do both?" And so, anyways, that's kind of what comes to my mind. He's a bit of a rebel, and I guess you could say a troublemaker. But it doesn't hurt to be a rebel and a troublemaker when you happen to be the literal Son of God. You get to do whatever you want, I guess. Well, I guess unless God didn't want you to have free will. So I'm just kidding around. I think Jesus Christ did have free will as well as all of us, because he wanted that full human experience. And so going to this, when Jesus returned to the temple and began teaching, the leading priests and elders came up to him. They demanded, "By what authority are you doing all these things? Who gave you the right?" "I'll tell you what authority I do these things if you answer one question. Did John's authority to baptize come from heaven, or was it merely human?" I love these stories when he does this, and kind of makes their head kind of spin and blood boil probably. They talked it over among themselves. "If we say it was from heaven, he will ask us why we didn't believe in John. But if we say it was merely human, we'll be mobbed because the people believe John was a prophet." So they finally responded, "We don't know." And then Jesus responded, "Then I won't tell you by what authority I do these things. But what do you think about this? A man with 2 sons told the older boy, 'Son, go out and work in a vineyard today.' The son answered, 'No, I won't go.' But later he changed his mind and went. Then his father told the other son, 'You should go.' And the son said, 'Yes,' but he didn't end up going. So which of the 2 obeyed his father?" And then they replied, "The first." And then, I couldn't agree more. It's one thing to speak that you're going to do something. And we've all met people like this, folks, and maybe we're all guilty of it at times, and this is a conversation I've had about this whole thing with the Bible with my wife. She's like, "Bobby, once you kind of commit to this, you're on the hook for a year, pal." So obviously I'm going to keep trying to keep it at 8:30 p.m. But if for some reason my life kind of changed a little bit and I had to change the time, I would let everybody know. But she was extremely, she was very firm on this and took a firm stance that you better not say it if you're not going to do it, because it's going to reflect poorly on you and it's not who you are and so forth. So I appreciate her skepticism that I would be able to keep this up. But we are in today here, 32, and it just so happens there's 333 days left to go, which anyways, that's my Twitter handle, UAmerica333. So it's funny how today is kind of tied into that number for me, 333. So then Jesus explained the meaning of this. "I tell you the truth, corrupt tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before we do." Wait, so I want to point something out here, folks. Jesus just said corrupt tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of heaven. Isn't there a prostitute that's the vice president? I'm sorry. That was I had to say it. There's a prostitute that's the vice president right now. And then, corrupt tax collectors, isn't that pretty much all of Congress? So Jesus is basically telling us, listen here, guys. We know you might not be happy with your Congress, and we know you're not happy with your vice president, but they still get to go in. I'm just kidding around. I'm not calling for that. That's up to God. That's above my pay scale. But anyways, when I was reading this one today, that's what came to my mind. He's talking about Congress and the Vice President of the United States. How appropriate. So For John the Baptist came and showed them the right way to live, but you didn't believe him, while the tax collectors and prostitutes did, but they did it anyways. So they believed in God, but since they did, and they did their thing, I guess somehow they get a pass. I guess they served the purpose of bringing evil into the world to test the rest of us. Maybe that's the pass. And even when you saw this happening, you refused to believe him and repent your sins. Now listen to another story. A certain landowner. Oh man, this is a really good story, by the way. I like this one a lot too. Matthew 21 was spot on today. This is a pretty powerful one. Now listen to another story. A certain landowner planted a vineyard, built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time the grape harvest, he sent servants to collect his share of crop. But the farmers grabbed his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. So the landowner sent a larger group of his servants to collect. But the results were the same. Finally, the owner sent his son, thinking, surely they will respect my son. But when the tenant farmers saw him, they said to another, come, here comes the heir to this estate. Let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves. So they grabbed him, dragged him out, and murdered him. When the owner of the vineyard returns, Jesus asked, what do you think he will do to those farmers? The religious leaders replied, he will put the wicked men to a horrible death and lease the vineyard to others who will give his share of crop after each harvest. Then Jesus asked them, didn't you ever read the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see. I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a nation that will produce the proper fruit. Anyone who stumbles over the stone will be broken to pieces, and it will crush anyone it falls on. So when the leading priests and Pharisees heard this parable, they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers. They wanted to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowds who considered Jesus to be a prophet. See, what's interesting about this as well, about these wicked farmers, and in thinking about this story, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to another nation to produce the proper fruit. So, when I it's kind of like thinking about the story for a little while, and thinking about the individuals who took who were managing this property on behalf of the owner, and the way they behaved, and how ill their ways were, and how evil their ways were. And the question that came into my mind as I'm reading this and thinking about it is, did the owner of the land in that farm and so forth, did they reap what they sowed? Did he create the situation in which he garnered that much resentment? Or maybe these folks weren't as they didn't understand they didn't understand how these things should be set up in a way that's equitable and just. And maybe this owner wasn't just. There's a lot of other questions that come into my mind as to why they would do such a thing, because when you look at our society, right? There's a bunch of fortunes around us. We kind of live in a country that there's a lot of people that have a lot more money than us, and there's a bunch of people that have a lot less money than us, and then we got a bunch of people that have similar amounts of money than us, and there's the whole spectrum and everywhere in between. However, if our overall fabric of society turns into one in which people feel cheated, and they feel as though maybe the gains were ill-gotten. And I think, unfortunately, that's kind of spilling in some respects, not for all Americans, but some groups of Americans and some of the things that they do. And nobody has a monopoly on this, folks. There's different types of people that do bad things, and it's being exposed. And so, I don't know how it's all going to turn out, but I could tell you that it is a dangerous situation at times when I kind of observe, try to be objective and look at history of how fast these things can kind of spiral out of control. And so when I think about this story, we don't know the backstory. We don't know if this owner was a just owner. And maybe them striking out the way they did was a way of them retaliating for generations or life, like 50 years. So who knows how many times they felt as though they were cheated, and this was finally their time and opportunity to get even. And we see this in the real world today, folks. We have people trying to pit people against others. I guess you can say based on the color of people's skin, I guess race. There are some people that pit people against each other for religion, which I disagree with some religions, but I never, ever agree with violence. So I may say I don't agree with certain principles, religions that try to violate different people's rights. From my perspective, I don't believe they're religions. I believe they're cults, and that's just the way my brain works. And but even if they're cults, there's cults within the Christian faith. There's radicalized Christians. There's radicalized Jews who don't want women to be able to go to service, for example. I've heard about that too. And so you have to look at the whole spectrum and then kind of say, okay, well, how many are there that are doing these types of crazy things? And what does it look like relative to the whole sample size, right? The omega set, as they say in math. And so, this is kind of, yeah, that's funny, Donna, you're right. It does seem like the BLM folks, right? This is kind of what we're up against, and we don't know, because so much misinformation is taking place in our society. There's so many lies taking place, not just from people on U.S. soil that used to be Americans, but now have turned into Satanists. Satanists, in my opinion, are nothing different than communists. And so you have this combination of people that have been corrupted by Satanists. And then you have other nation states that are trying to undermine the United States at the same time, and they're supporting some of these Satanists on U.S. soils. And then, you have other people that are just trying to make sense of it, and they might be overreacting to wrong information. So then that creates a bit of a mess of its own. And so, we're in a tough spot. I mean, we really are, and I think, I said it once. I know I've talked about it, and I talk about it with clients, I guess, and maybe I do think it applies in this situation too. When you don't know what you should do because you don't have confidence in the surety of the information, sometimes it's better to just let more time pass and kind of wait and see what comes out of it. And I know that the United States, if we would have followed just that basic, simple policy in the past on some of these things, I don't think we would have been in as many wars as we were, in the past 40, 50 years. And I think that we've wasted, I don't know, north of $5-10 trillion needlessly on war because of bad information and because of fear mongering and because of lies and deception. And how much of it was U.S. based and how much of it was propaganda from other nation states, or how much was it a combination of the two? I'm not entirely sure, but what I do know is that just like there's a deep-seated apparatus in government, as we know, some people call it the deep state. and there are these career politicians and bureaucrats that have infested themselves into government. I do believe that we, the people, need to come up with something outside of government, not universities, because those are corrupted, but more of like a private citizen type of thing, where people are kind of like committed to citizenship actively, not for 5 years, but like for 20, 30, 40 years. There's got to be some kind of mechanism to serve as a check to unchecked power that lasts decades. And we do not have that right now. And I've been thinking a lot about it from an organizational design perspective, that we've never set up a structure to serve as a check to the university system, to serve as a check to religious institutions and how they might be compromised, or to our government. And I think that we're at that point as a society that I think we need to do it if we want to keep this thing intact. And so, I'm not exactly sure, how who's going to do it. I do have an idea of how I would do it, and we'll see if I end up doing it, like building it out. But this is not something I'm going to snap my fingers. This is a decade long problem that I'd have to work on and think through, and then mobilize people over time, because I do think that we need to create various clusters of different groups and within society that are kind of serving a similar purpose across all the different states and counties to check this power. And so, so that's kind of where we're at. So what happened with Jovan? What's going on, Jules? Something happened to Jovan? So I'm not sure why you're praying for me out of the blue. It just seems like something happened to him. I hope he's okay. So anyways, let me know, Jules, if you know something about Jovan that we should all know about. Read up, Bobby. Uh-oh. What do you mean read? What am I reading? Oh, boy. That's not good. I don't like hearing that, Jovan. Something happened? Up on the chat. What's a DS? Posted today he has had a DS hidden in his direct group. Oh boy. That's not good. Who is the person? That's not good at all. Well, yeah, that's the first of I'm hearing of it. That sucks, I know that I've had some interesting meetings and people that have come into my life as a result of some of the things that I've been doing. And I have, tried to, we are virtually shouting. I just assume if you've won, okay, read Jovan's. Okay. Well, you guys want me to read it and respond? Because Jovan is somebody I'm going to be working with, possibly with some of this Arizona stuff, either officially or unofficially, interactive activities per. So, I don't know. I'm going to have to call some people after this, and because I really don't know what the heck. My heart, my soul hurts to know I had a deep state plant infiltrate my immediate team. I didn't see it. Wow. Here, let me help you out of nowhere to undermine the whole time. Oh, that's horrible. So, yeah, that sucks. Well, folks, But this is what I'll tell you. The way I operate, okay, I've had a bunch of crazy advice come at me, the past couple months. I've had people try to tell me other people are this, other people are that. And, this has happened the whole time. And, if I've tried to keep a clear head the whole time, this is probably why I'm praying as much as I do, is to keep a clear head and not to be swayed by any of this. But I will say that, I do know that one of the things that I've done is whenever I find things, whenever I have any findings, I immediately say I've reserved the right to post them. So any information that I come across or I discover in my data, I always assume that somebody may take me out. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, you know what? Just in case I have an accident today, and I figure something out, I just send it out to everywhere as soon as I possibly can, and I send it to a lot of locations, folks. And so I've done that right out of the gate. And maybe this is maybe God has guided me to do this, because by taking this approach, I do feel the prayers that come my way from Americans that support what I'm doing. And I could feel people praying for me. And that is unbelievable support, because I do think it helps keep me safe and keeps my family safe. So I'm extremely appreciative of that. I haven't done anything to try to steal anything, like steal information or steal data to do any of my work. Everything is just like I try to use, I try to use the raw material that everybody has. I try to look at it and think about it and use different types of mathematics to transform it. But I'm not trying to go anywhere. I'm not trying to work with people to hack anything or anything. I don't need any complications, folks. I'm not interested, and I have no idea if anybody's doing these things. I don't really care to know, frankly. It's not anything I want to be part of. So since I know I don't want to be part of it, and since I know I want to just stay active and looking for the truth and doing what I think is the right thing and explaining it, look, I did a video about how Chinese might infiltrated our systems, our election process. And then, I posted this today on Telegram. I've had all these Chinese models, try to friend me on Facebook, and I kind of posted one of the photos. But here's a funny thing: after I said that post this morning, I said all these Chinese models have been reaching out to me since I did this post on Saturday. All those requests disappeared from my Facebook feed. Isn't that something? So these guys are reacting that fast. I turn around and say something on Saturday. They got a flood of these different little bots. Maybe these women are real, maybe they're not. I don't really care, because I'm never going to meet any of these women, and never would I ever attempt to meet them. I'm very happily married. But it's still disturbing that these sons of bitches are trying to infiltrate this way. And I wish we can ban other nations from seeing our stuff on a personal level, that we can just just cut them off. But anyways, somebody listened to my message on Monday morning, because all these people that were these Chinese models that were in my friend request list, I went to go look to snap some photos, right? Aside from that one that I had snapped, and they're all gone. So it's like, wow, somebody got the message, cancel those bots. This guy figured us out. So let's take him out. Let's take him out of here. Maybe people think he's nuts if they ask to see what these photos look like. But at least I had one snapped. So this is what's so funny. Anyways, that's what's going on. So let's go on to Proverbs 6, and let's hope that Jovan gets through this, and so forth. Because go where? What are you talking about in April? I don't know what you're talking about, Maria. But anyways, here we go. Proverbs 6. This is quick and short, and we'll go right to it. This really sums up our mainstream media in this country right now and a lot of stuff, okay? There are 6 things that the Lord hates, right? He actually hates 7 things. Haughty eyes. Wow. That's the way a lot of arrogant people look at other people, right? This is the way the Democrats like to look at Americans, with the haughty eyes, as though everybody else is a servant. And we're the help, and they get to call the shots and try to act like they're gods on earth. This is also the techocracy that kind of runs things. They look at us with these haughty eyes. So the Lord hates these folks, which is good to know. A lying tongue. Wow. That's like Congress. That's the whole press corps. That's our university system. That's a lot of people in K through 12. Yeah, Proverbs 6, this is pretty powerful. I think I'm going to turn around and I'm going to make this like my cover photo. This is what we're living through, folks. Hands that kill the innocent. Here we go. We got the demonic party, the Democrats doing the will of the devil and promoting the execution of babies, abortion, infanticide, letting babies be born and botched abortions and let them die or drown them in saline solution. It's right here. I mean, they talk about it. Proverbs 6, a heart that plots evil. Wow, we've been under that spell by a bunch of politicians for decades. We're still living through the consequences of the crime family, the Bushes, as well as McCain, who's a traitor and colluded with the Bushes and the Clintons. And I mean, you guys want to keep adding to the list too? I mean, these people are all evil. Both political parties were infiltrated by some very evil people, and they hijacked religion. They hijacked God and used God's name in vain. And we didn't pay it close enough attention to what they were doing with their evil deeds. Unfortunately, I voted for both those scumbags, because I bought into this whole idea of the GOP and in that they were going to have good people and they somehow vetted them out, but they never did. Right? That was we got sold a bill of goods. So by no means are the Republicans this righteous party that they try to hold themselves out to be. There's a lot of evil people in it. I do think there happens to be fewer evil people in the GOP than the Democratic Party, but they're neck and neck, folks. There's a lot of really bad people in both, and we need to do a better job of knocking them out and finding good people to run. And we need to bring honest, God first human beings back in charge of this country. I do believe that, and I think that if we all turn our we all put God first again, I do think that we'll turn things around so fast, because with God anything is possible, and I think we need to do that as a nation. So then, feet that race to do wrong. Wow, that sounds like Congress. They can't move fast enough to try to figure out how to cheat us out of more money, add on more debt, try to enslave us with debt diplomacy on U.S. soil. And this is what's taking place, right here. The feet that race to do wrong because they know that their number could be up at any moment. A false witness who pours out the lies. Wow. We have this corrupt prostitute that's the vice president who had no problem, bringing out false witnesses against, Supreme Court justice nominees. But here we are. We were played on that one too. They made it so outrageous that they brought these false accusations against this justice. And meanwhile, this justice looks as though he was part of the scam the whole time. But how do you sneak in someone who's a scammer, who is part of the Bush crime family, who is part of the audit of the ballots, like back in 2000, like he was involved in that legal case, I think, right, for the Bushes with the hanging chads, then to simultaneously create fake witnesses that try to undermine him, so that then you're rooting for the guy that's being undermined by false witnesses. So it's like you got two cheats. One cheats more than the other one, so you focus your attention on the one that's cheating more. So the one that's a bigger false witness and lying. And that's, I think, how they got these people in, is they literally figured out how to, essentially have us root for the less corrupt, the person that wasn't as corrupt as the one that was more corrupt, but they were both corrupt. And we didn't stop and question, what the hell, what if they did this on purpose? What if they knew about it the whole time? That's what we should have asked. So we should have been doing this, and we need to do this going forward. We should always question, what's the angle? Anyways, and then a person who sows discord in the family. Well, I got to tell you, between the media, between Congress, between globalists, they've been in even religious institutions now, the school system, they all are trying to break up the family, because if they cannot put in their socialist, evil, satanic agenda, if we have strong families intact. And so they've been doing everything they can to undermine it, break up the families through devices that keep our kids' attention, break up the families through programming on television, making sure that, people have less than half of the meals at home, right? This is one thing that did change in the past year, but prior to 2019, over half of the meals in this country were eaten out of the home. So one of the key strengths of the American experience was people sharing their experiences and lessons around the dinner table, around the lunch table, around the breakfast table, as family, during different days of the week or during every night. And, a lot of these shifts that took place between fast food and between getting everybody to think that they shouldn't cook, and making cooking, an enjoyable part of the human experience, was all meant to undermine the family. And then, like you said, to use processed food, to give people brain fog, to do things that end up getting us sick, putting lots of different chemicals in that lead to obesity that doesn't seem to jive with the number of calories consumed. Did you guys ever think about that? A lot of people that don't overeat calorie-wise, and yet they continue to get larger over time. I've noticed that at times, that there's no way people eat that much. It doesn't make sense, but why they keep picking up weight as though they're overeating. And, I like to observe and I observe myself at times that I'm like, the math doesn't work, that if I'm consuming, 1,800 calories, 2,000 calories, that I should pick up any weight based on my height and size. But when I do pick up weight, when I monitor it for a week or two, I kind of peel the onion back and be like, why am I picking up weight? I'm not overeating. And so sure enough, I find that there's ingredients that are causing inflammation in my body. There's ingredients that I don't know what the hell it is, right? I ate something that has some names of things that I don't know what they are, like what this stuff is. And so we just need to go back to the basics, folks, because these 7 things they're in full-fledged mode right now in our society, and we need to try to unwind them one at a time. And the way we unwind them is we need to take away power from all these people that are doing this to us, and kind of reconstruct, redesign our lives, so that we can minimize all this evil that seems to be everywhere. So anyways, with that being said, thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I just want to say God bless you. God bless your family and your friends. May God continue to bless the greatest nation in the history of the world. May peace be with you. And if you don't have peace, please put your faith back in God, and peace will most definitely find you. So thank you again for the evening, and I will talk to you guys soon. And then I'll see if I can report anything on what I hear maybe tomorrow about Jovan. When I find out, I'll talk to some people that know him pretty well and so forth. So, okay. Have a wonderful evening.